Broadcasting from the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia to around the globe. You're listening to Sharkbite Biz, your exclusive place for business strategy, sales, marketing, and tech in the roaring 20s. And now, here's your host, David Strausser.
It's that time again. Yes, indeed. I'm your host, David Strausser, and welcome to another special episode of Sharkbite Biz, your place to chat business strategy during the ongoing global pandemic. Today's episode is really, really special. Some, like me, might even say legendary. We'll get into that in a moment, but first, let's talk a little bit about business. The music industry has been hit extremely hard. It's not just major rock stars or people like Taylor Swift that's been essentially put out of work due to the pandemic. It's affecting a ton of people. People who work at stadiums for security, roadies, companies that produce tour t-shirts, food vendors. The whole industry has been put on hold, and it's hurting more people than just the successful artists out there. Smaller talents or people who depend on those talents in the small business community are suffering just as well. If you own a bar that usually puts on live music, you haven't been able to do that. Why? Well, one, because you probably can't have people in the bar right now. But even if you could, social distancing's, it's just not practical yet to have the live shows. Some places are, but for many, you're not. And it's an industry that really affects all of us in one way or another. It's the trickle-down effect. Enter today's guest, somebody who has been at the helm of the changes for the past nearly 50 plus years. He has witnessed the industry's ups, downs, and everything in between. Even with that, he has been on the forefront of the digital transformation of the music industry and is also a small business owner as he owns 2 of his own record labels. So who are we talking about? Jack Douglas. Somebody who has gone through career transformations. He originally started out as a folk musician, and then he converted into an engineer, and that led to him eventually being a producer. And he has produced hits from Patti Smith, Blue Oyster Cult, New York Dolls, Cheap Trick, and the classic rock icons Aerosmith. And that includes hits like Walk This Way, Sweet Emotion, and the legendary classic rock album, Rocks. He also worked with Alice Cooper, Hollywood Vampires, even John Lennon. He started with him as an engineer around the Imagine album. They built an amazing friendship, and he actually produced all of John's work and Yoko's up until John's so tragic passing. This guy's resume really speaks volume to his talent and his place in music history. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. Jack Douglas.
Creative and innovation tips.
Hi, Jack. Welcome to Sharkbite Biz. I've got to say, it's a huge honor to have you here, sir.
Hello, David. Nice to be here.
Yeah,
Nice to be
no
anywhere.
problem. Yeah, exactly. There are these times, right? So, very first question that I have for you, it's a tradition here. It's very softball. Obviously, I know who you are, but can you tell some of the listeners that might not recognize your name who you are exactly?
But do I know who I am?
Yeah, I hope you do.
Okay, my name is Jack Douglas, a musician, a film and TV scorer, recording engineer, a producer, and a dad.
Oh, no, that's amazing. That was a very modest intro for who you are, because I need to put it into perspective for some of the listeners out there. Jack isn't just a regular producer. You have produced some of the biggest albums out there, at least to me, including Aerosmith, Cheap Trick. We were just speaking about, you've worked with John Lennon. So,
Allen Ginsberg, how about that one?
Oh, wow.
I co-produced an Allen Ginsberg album with Bob Dylan. Actually, it was fun.
You've had a lot of fun throughout your career.
Yes.
That's for sure. And full disclosure for everybody, I'm a huge fan of Jack's, as well as I'm a huge Aerosmith fan, as many of my listeners already know. And, I'd like to ask you, this is one of my fandom questions. What is your favorite Aerosmith song?
Back in the Saddle.
Back in the Saddle. Why is it Back in the Saddle?
I like everything. I like the performance. I like how ferocious it is. I think as far as the band writing their own material, they were at the top of their game when it came to rocks. And it kicks off, my favorite Aerosmith album. And I think it just says it all. It's my favorite, I guess.
That's
maybe
amazing.
My second favorite is Kings and Queens,
Kings and Queens. Kings and Queens is my favorite song. I always liked it from a young age because it's got like that fantasy type feel to it to me. And I don't know. It's deep. It feels dark to me, and it's just a beautiful song. But with the Rocks album, that's one album that many refer to as the best Aerosmith album of all time.
I would have to agree. Excuse me.
No problem.
I just think that it was the one that came closest to where the band was at. Mm-hmm. And the way we recorded it, especially, it made it seem like everything about it, even the keys of the songs, and the structure was all built around, and the writing was all built around the room we were recording in, which was a warehouse, in Waltham, Mass. So we never meant to do our recording there. We were only going to do our pre-production. Pre-production for Aerosmith albums always meant at least 2 months of pre-production because they were on the road and they didn't write on the road.
Right.
They would come to pre-production with germs and everything would be created there. So everything was created in that room. Every day I would go into that warehouse and hang a rug or put a couch somewhere or to make the room more bearable. And then we started writing, and we would write so that they sounded good in the room. And so when came time to record, it was, we should just record right here, right where we're set up. Wow. Just live, and it'll sound like what we had in our minds when we were writing this and putting it together. And they were on top of the game, and they were, the drugs were working. They were more recreational, and it just. We had very strict routine. We went to the gym in the morning, worked out. We got to the studio, the warehouse at 11. We worked until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. And after that, we partied.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard a lot of different stories just from Steven's side, Joe's side about recording during the Rocks period. And I'm sure some of them are true and some of them, they wish that they think maybe was true. Mm-hmm. But, and that's really interesting that you were somebody that was there to put this in perspective. I mean, you were on Toys in the Attic with Walk This Way, Sweet Emotion, Get Your Wings with Same Old Song and Dance. I mean, you've had a number of Aerosmith hits, and that's a direction that you've went. So that's really cool to hear it from somebody that was actually there helping produce and formulate those albums. That's what you feel. Now, I'd like to ask you about another person that you've also recorded with. I think the classic album Imagine by John Lennon. You were also a part of that as well, too.
Well, I was a part of it as an engineer. So a lot of the work was already done in Tittenhurst in England. And then he moved to New York and he brought the record to New York. Phil Spector was a hero of mine. And I got to work with John, and it was very under really weird circumstances because I was put on the record as the transfer and editing engineer, which put me in another room and, away from the action. And one day, 3-4 days into the project, maybe a week at the most, he came into the room where I was working, looking for a little solace, looking for a place that was quiet or whatever. And he sat in my room and we got to talking, and I told him about my adventures in Liverpool. in 1965, and I was the week that Rubber Soul came out, for example. I was there. I bought the album maybe the second day it came out, and that week, because of various circumstances, I was on the cover of Liverpool's biggest newspaper. A big picture of me and my adventures. Awesome. And when we got to talking, and I was deported shortly after.
Hold on. You got deported from England?
I got deported from Liverpool for working without a work permit.
Oh.
In a van.
Ooh.
But I had escaped from a ship, and that's what all to do was about. And so he remembered. We got to talking, and he remembered these two guys that was my other bandmate and myself on the front pages of English newspapers. The week that Rubber Soul came out, they all talked about who are these two crazy guys,
right?
And when he found out it was me, and I was editing his and making transfers of his music, he thought that was something that had come from the stars. So
it was meant to be.
It was meant to be, and so he said, "You've got to work on the record on." I said, "Come on into the main room when you finish your work," and now you're working on this record. And we both lived in the village, and it turned into a friendship. And then pretty soon he asked me if I would do all of the Yoko's recordings, all of her experimental stuff. And so, I did a bunch of Yoko things with John producing, and then I did the Christmas song. So it is Christmas.
Right.
I worked on that with him, and a bunch of other stuff over the years until I went out to California. I was producing Alice Cooper at
I love Alice
Sunset
Cooper.
Sound. Yeah, I was producing Alice.
I don't know if you can
Sound.
see it, but right up there's my Alice Cooper picture. I'm a huge Alice fan too.
Oh, okay. And so I was part of that whole craziness in California. Right. Although I was the sober guy, so I would usually drive the getaway car. And then he came back, New York. He retired, and then asked me to produce his comeback album, which was Double Fantasy.
That's quite the story. I mean, I'm just kind of here a little bit in awe, just hearing somebody that was there, part of the musical history that you've been. It's really, to me, it's quite amazing, like I said. But I'd like to make a little bit of a pivot into the music industry. By the way, go ahead.
I worked with George over that period as well. On the Concert for Bangladesh, and just recently worked with Ringo and Paul on a song of Ringo's, and I did all the string arrangements.
Wow! So, like, just recently, being like now, you just worked with Ringo.
A few months ago, yeah.
Oh, wow!
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's the song "Grow Old with Me," which John wrote, and I brought to Ringo and said, "You should record this."
Wow. That's amazing. So obviously you worked with John in the past, but did you work with Paul or Ringo back then as well too?
No, I didn't. No.
Okay.
But the reason I worked with George is because recommended that I work with George when he was looking for someone to work with, and then I became friends with Ringo, and then I brought him this song. And I said, he was doing a new album. I said, you should do this one. John's only demoed it.
Yeah.
And it would be good for you. And it's his wife's favorite song, Ringo song.
Wow. Again, I mean,
and Paul said, I'm in town. Why don't I play bass on?
Wow, it's funny how those things kind of just allied. It's really cool. So I did want to try to pivot a little bit more into the music industry, since this is, business podcast, and we like talking about how things have changed. And you've been, as it's well established right now that you've been around in the industry for a long time. Everybody knows how, you went through the transformation from vinyl to digital. But how would you, as an insider view, back to
vinyl?
Yeah, vinyl is coming back popular again. I mean, how do you view that transformation that's all happened?
Look, we started recording on Edison cylinders, so you know, it was bound to make improvements and leap. I mean, I thought the CD sounded great because, you know, vinyl, after a while, you had clicks and pops. And although the first time you played it, it sounded better than anything.
Right.
But, you know, digital was cleaner. And as the recording of it improved, I didn't go to digital recording, although I'm credited for doing the first rock digital album in '77.
Oh wow!
On 3M digital machine. That was tape. So I was experimenting with digital back then, and I did the Rick Dufay, who became a member of Aerosmith.
Yeah, they're in Rock in a Hard Place, right?
Yeah, so I did his solo album for Polydor. I did that digitally, and so you know it was a very low sampling rate, but it sounded cool. But it didn't really compare to analog, and I still prefer to use analog. In my studio in Los Angeles, I have two Studer tape machines, a 24-track and a 16-track that I can run together. And I like to mix to analog, but I have all the bells for digital. And after I record to analog, I transfer to digital and I work. That becomes a process that I work in. So, you know, you have to be able to combine the best of everything in order to make records today. But what is really cool is that people are making pretty good recordings in their home.
Oh yeah,
with and you know, I would guess that most of the stuff in the urban top 50 and a lot of the pop top 50 has all been created in computer.
Yeah, I'd probably guess that too. One thing that I hear from older bands, like classic rock bands, like in Aerosmith, is that a lot of them talk about, you know, kind of like what you were just talking about with the digital transformation that the industry had. Whereas old school, when you were doing Walk This Way, let's say, you'd be doing a full live recording for the most part, right?
Well, yeah, because that was a band that sounded best live.
Okay.
And I mean, yeah, we saved guitar solos and vocals for later, and you know, and various overdubs. But that's why we were able to do the early records, like Get Your Wings, on 16-track.
Right.
It could be unheard of. No, you could do it on 16-track, and then Toys in the Attic was done 24-track, and the rest of them were done 24. But other bands, I mean, I work with artists now. Sometimes we do a whole rhythm section, sometimes we don't. There's just no rules anymore. But I do like to hear musicians work off of each other.
Yeah.
And work off a live vocal.
That energy,
the actual,
that vibe. It's hard to duplicate if you're just kind of playing playing to a song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, everyone's doing it. You lay the drums first, you lay a bass over it. I have an artist that I work with. I record him with a click and acoustic guitar and a vocal first. And then I eventually erase all of that. He plays drums to the acoustic guitar and the vocals, and then the acoustic guitar goes, and then everything is laid over it. And if you mix it properly, and you can make it sound like it was all done at once,
wow.
You just have to make sure that it has some imperfections in it.
Right. No, that's great. What about the digital distribution of music? Okay, so I guess let me frame that question up a little bit. Like, I just had Brian Vander Ark, lead singer of the Verve Pipe, here last week, and one of the things that he was saying about this is that his former number one hit, The Freshman, I guess it would have been Q2, got 4 million plays on streaming services. And he only got paid like a total of $250 for stuff like that. Streaming service is good for the consumers, but do you think it's actually fair to the people, artists, producers like you guys?
You know, because of the size of my catalog, there was a time when it was being pirated. And, the streaming services weren't paying, and there was just the amount of royalties just went down the toilet. And that's when all of us producers had to charge a lot of money
right,
to make a record up front because we weren't going to make much on the backside.
right.
And then finally, streaming started to catch up a bit. Now, if you're an indie artist, you're not going to make much money. Your record is basically to promote your
live shows.
Yeah. My catalog, which is pretty enormous and has a lot of music that's continuously played, and even people are still buying hard copies of some of the music. I mean, Patti Smith, that never goes away. Aerosmith,
Walk This Way, things like that. Yeah.
Well, the whole catalog, and so streaming has caught up now, and between streaming and hard copy on my catalog, it's surpassed what I made, 10 years ago.
Right.
It's better now, but for a new indie artist, it's really rough. You're promoting your record. You might as well give the record away.
Right.
For the most part.
Right. The trade-off is, you're using it as promotion for the live shows where you're able to really kind of make your money back in merchandise and stuff like that, which actually.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And that brings me up to my next question because.
Well, one thing I want to point out is that it costs a lot less now to make a record.
Oh, yeah.
Than it did when, our budgets for our records were phenomenal. And now it costs, barely anything. In a home studio, it costs nothing for the most part.
So record companies aren't paying.
Costs a lot less.
Yeah. I mean, but they're not dishing out the big contracts like they were in days past because of that.
They will dish out a big contract to an urban or pop star up front.
Okay.
And not on the basis of this much per record, but up front. And, they're smart to get their money up front.
Oh, yeah.
They'll pay millions of dollars for who they think is going to be hot.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they're also taking a piece of their live and their publishing and everything else. It's what they call a 360 deal.
Oh, yeah.
They're taking part of their merchandising and everything else. So, in a way, it almost evens out.
Okay. So what I wanted to bring up there, too, because we just mentioned like the indie artist, you're coming out with an album. It's almost like giving it away just to promote the live shows. We're in the middle of a global pandemic. There are no shows. This has really affected people and devastated some in the music industry, hasn't it?
Well, yeah, but you have to realize it's devastated a guy who owns a restaurant.
Oh, yeah.
It's devastated everyone. So this is across the board problem. It's not the recording industry and the artists are not suffering any more or less than everyone else. We're all in this one together.
That's an excellent point. Because what I was going to bring up, too, is like, look, when we were all put into quarantine orders, you had a lot of artists, they're in quarantine too. What did they do? They just started streaming Facebook Live and started playing some of their hits for fans. And that really showed that.
Yeah, you got to figure out a way to do it. Like I said, Jay and I came up with this mixing and mastering service, which we do completely online because I'm not walking into a studio.
Right.
And neither is he. So, that's what we're doing. So you have to come up with something. As a producer, I can produce and mix. I can mix online and master.
Yeah.
And I can score a film, but I'm lucky that I'm able. I was in the middle of a film in England in January. I was on set.
Oh, wow.
And
can you tell us what film?
Film Let There Be Love was the work title.
Okay.
We were shooting in York, England, on a very old, an ancient city.
Oh, yeah.
And I came back to New York to start writing a jazz score for it. Had all my musicians, had the studio booked, and the producer called me up and said, "We're shut down." So it was a blow. So right now they've gone back to work in England on a different film I'm working on, but I'll see it. I'll see it tomorrow night. I'll see a rough cut of it, and I'll start scoring on Friday.
So
it'll take me a while.
Yeah. What I'm hearing from you is basically, and that's the heart and soul of what this show is about. That's why I started the Sharkbite Biz podcast, because a lot of people are suffering out there with their business, whether it's in the music industry, a restaurant, a small little mom and pop shop. And they don't always have the answers as far as how to make those pivots in order to survive. And that's why I wanted to bring on experts like you, as well as other business owners, to kind of explain what they did to help as many people as we can.
Yeah. I mean, if you play an instrument, if you play piano or if you play guitar, and if you got any kind of recording, now is the time to write. If you're an artist, you should be writing, and it's time to create. So I mean, that
100%.
That's the best thing I could. Yeah, we're all in this for a while. It's a rough ride.
Do you think it's going to linger around till next year, or how pessimistic, optimistic are you?
I think I'm optimistic that by next summer we'll be getting back together. Maybe late spring.
I don't think most people thought that we would be here in mid-August and we would still be teetering on lockdowns or no lockdowns. This has definitely been drawn out more than we thought.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get into the politics.
Neither do I. Believe me, I follow you on Facebook. Could have
been better.
I follow you. I totally agree, and I've seen but it is.
We had an Ebola pandemic. 2 people died.
Yeah, different.
Enough said.
Yeah, different times, different things. You gave us some really good advice there as far as just pivoting, creating, stuff like that. What are you seeing though as far as trends? I mean, are you seeing people are actually creating more during these times?
I do. I watch a lot of live videos, and then there's they pass the hat, and I've contributed whatever I can. I can't be the only one contributing.
Yeah.
Somebody with a guitar and a voice, and if it's good, and if I think it's cool, and they ask for a contribution, I throw it their way.
Okay. So we have about time.
I mean,
Go ahead.
We have to help each other out here as well. We really do.
I think honestly
I mean, it's just,
I think
if an artist comes to me and the stuff that I'm mixing, for example, I mixed a single song. Jay and I mixed a single song for an artist, and he said, "I have 12 more songs I'd like to mix, but I can't afford to do it. So, we will work with you because we have to."
Right.
You need to get your thing out there, and we want to help you.
That's great. I love hearing that. I mean, that's just showing how, you're somebody that's extremely successful throughout your career, and yet you're still humble enough and compassionate enough that you care about the industry to be willing to help other people that are struggling like that.
Well, I mean, I have to, we have to think about what this industry did for me.
Right.
I know Steven, and he's the same way. He's always ready to give back. I know, a lot of my artist friends are always ready to give back.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's great. That's great.
We don't, we didn't, a good number of us would be bag boys at ShopRite.
It's like,
we weren't qualified for that much. I was lucky enough to be able to score.
Yeah.
The funny thing was when I got hired at Record Plant in New York, got hired as the janitor. And so
You've come a long way.
During the day, I would do my janitorial commitments. And then at night, I was a client because I was scoring ABC after school TV shows.
Wow.
So it was like a weird situation.
Yeah, that's pretty odd. That's pretty odd. But we do have time for about like one more final question. And again, just for the fandom of the music industry, I want to go back to a fun story. Can you tell us one of your favorite, maybe lesser known stories that's not out there, written about a million times about, any artist, whoever you'd like, just one of your personal favorite stories about a recording with somebody?
I guess, so much of my stories are out there, like where Walk This Way came from.
Right.
I'm sure you know that story. Okay, so I'll tell you a Patti Smith story.
Oh, yeah.
We were doing the Radio Ethiopia album, and there was a title track, the Radio Ethiopia, and Patti, who didn't really play guitar that well, but she had one of Jimi Hendrix guitars.
Yeah.
So this whole doing this Radio Ethiopia was going to be a very spiritual. We tried it a few times, and she would stop and say, "Tonight's not the night to do this," and we would do another track. And we put it off, and we put it off, and we put it off. And then a hurricane hit New York, a terrible hurricane. No traffic was allowed. I lived in Montclair, New Jersey.
Okay.
So across the Hudson River.
Mm-hmm.
And she called me up from her apartment. It was just terrible out. And she said, "You know what? Tonight's the night." I said, "You could be kidding. There's a hurricane. There's a hurricane." And she said, "I don't care. This is it. This violent storm is bringing the mojo." And so I had to drive there was no traffic, and my car was getting blown all over the road. I could barely see. When I finally got to the Lincoln Tunnel, it was like, a cop actually stopped me and said, "What are you doing? What are you doing out here?" And I told him what I was doing, and he said, "All right, go ahead." He was a Patti Smith fan. And I got into the studio, and it was so bad. We were on the ground floor, Studio A, that water was coming into the actual room. And while we were playing, while I was recording it, I had my assistant putting sandbags up against every crack and crevice to stop the water that was coming. The wind was whistling, and she picked up Jimmy's guitar, and she looked up and said, "Help me, Jimmy." And
literally, it was one of Jimmy's guitars.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story. So tell me, Jack, how can people get in touch with you if they need to reach out for your production services or anything? Do you have a website or anything?
It's, you can reach me at UNKLEREMIX. It's Uncle Remix with a K, 1@gmail.com.
Okay, I'll also be posting that in the description as well, too.
Okay, great. Yeah. Well, it was great.
Talking with you. I mean, honestly, it's been such an honor. I view you as legendary for all that you were able to bring to us that I have enjoyed personally throughout my whole life. And I hope once this global pandemic is over by mid next summer, we get you back on here to talk about it.
I think late spring. And some other time, because I came up in the music business when it was run by gangsters.
Oh, yeah.
And so if you want to talk about what the music business end of it was like during that period, I would be happy to talk to you about about history, the history of the music.
You know what? We might do a bonus episode. Give me about a week or two. I'll reach out to you and we'll do another recording, sir. Thank you again so much, Jack.
Very good.
Wow. I'm speechless. Really. I don't know if I'm speechless or I'm starstruck, but that was amazing. Okay, hold on. Let me rephrase that. Jack Douglas is amazing. Look, there's something I just really want to point out. As we reach success, some of us let that success go to our heads. How many sales reps out there or business owners, once they start making it, they get this huge ego. I've been there. They get arrogant and they're cocky. They're not real fun to deal with. Yeah, you need some arrogance. You need some ego. That ego, arrogance, it does drive people to do more, to do better. Competition's good. But let's just take a step back. Did you hear how Jack introduced himself when I asked him for his background and his experience? Wow. Talk about being humble with all that he has done and accomplished in his life. And that's how he so humbly introduces himself. That's a really big thing that I think people need to keep in mind as they start reaching different levels of success. Being humble is one of those critical factors that are needed for maintaining success. Don't let that go to your head and then you end up crashing and burning because people just don't want to work with you. Unless you're that good that people can only work with you, gotta maintain that degree of humbleness to really get ahead in life. Recognize others around you that have helped you build the success. So that was some pretty good conversation there. I mean, put the Ringo Starr and Paul McCartney story aside, listen to how he has digitally transformed. Ringo records something, sends the file back to Jack. Jack then edits it and produces it using a software. I think he said he was using Avid, if I remember correctly. And then I guess he was casually hanging out with Paul McCartney, just like everybody does. Asked Paul to lay down the bass line, edits it again, and then uploads it back to Ringo for review. Is that as efficient as doing the process in one shot in person? Probably not. But he has forced himself to digitally transform, and he really gave a rocking example of how he actually did it. Yes, this was a music-based interview, but some of the topics out there for business are kind of universal. I mean, they're really valid to most business owners, business people, especially if you're in the creative type business. His advice to use this time to rebrand and all that good stuff is critical moving forward. We've heard this time and time again from business owners and experts of all types on this show. The trends and data that you have really aren't valid right now. The buying trends, historical data, throw it out the window. It's no longer valid. You may be thinking, well, March was about 6 months ago, so now we kind of have some trends. And yeah, maybe for some businesses you have some trends, but I would still argue that that's probably not accurate because we're in a rapidly evolving situation. What you can do is use this time, really trust your instincts, and find out exactly what your customers' needs are during this time period, and use this time to reevaluate how you do business, how you brand, how you promote yourself, how you get yourself out there. So tell me, what did you all think? Amazing interview, right? I loved it. Like I said, I'm still starstruck. Jack is incredible, and I'm definitely going to have him back on the show again. So let's do this, something fun. Usually I ask for a business-related topic in the comment section. Today, how about you tell us, what's your favorite Jack Douglas song? Okay, something a little bit different. Tell us your favorite song that Jack Douglas had worked on. There's a ton of them out there. And I think when you're Google searching that to see the list of songs that he has produced or co-produced, you'll be pretty amazed with how many hits are in there. So did you love this video? If you did, please help me do the trifecta. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. Okay. I know, there was 4 there, but trifecta just sounded better. What can I say? We have incredible advice for business people of all types and backgrounds to really help get the word out. And let's build this community. Share this out there. This is what Jack Douglas, like I said, this video, some really good solid business advice and some fun discussion around the music industry. Thank you all again for checking this out, and we'll see you all next episode. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Sharkbite Biz. We hope you got some insightful info from this podcast. Be sure to subscribe to us through your favorite podcast app and visit us on the web at www.sharkbitebiz.com. How has business changed for you in the 20s? Email us at podcast@sharkbitebiz.com so you can join us and share your story.